Welcome. Today I'm going to discuss music therapy. Um, I think it's been the past maybe a decade that I found out that music therapy was a discipline. How it relates to me is later in high school, I started to see symptoms of depression, anxiety, and isolation more often. I got in a lot of trouble actually during high school. I got in trouble with the law a few times, and I think that's what knocked me off my rocker past the age of 18. Hanging around the wrong crowds and getting myself into some drugs, let's just say. And so all those combinations of things caused me a little chaos in my life. My diet wasn't great. I was still working out and playing sports. But I just ended up this crossroads in life where I was just turned off, if you will. I would sleep 12 to 15 hours a day when I was about 18, 19 years old. And this is entering college. I started college a semester late because I got in trouble with the law. Like I said, I hung around the wrong crowd. I ended up getting in a fight, let's just say. Let's just keep it simple. I got in a fight and then I was arrested and prosecuted for, I think it was felonious assault because of how I defended myself. It was like a martial art, I guess. I mean, I took martial arts as a kid, but I wasn't great at it. But the way I defended myself was, in the state's eyes, in Michigan, I was considered a weapon, I guess. I wasn't even a black belt. I got 3 or 4 belts in, and this was when I was 10 years old. But we won't go into details of that. So when that happened, all my aspirations of going into college, I felt like just went out the window. Starting late was really hurtful, I guess, and I felt like I was a failure in my own eyes and my family's eyes. So it was 3-month program or 3-month sentence, and then I had to go into a program for 3 months. And then in that program, which was aimed at rehabilitating teens, which wasn't really that great of a program, but it wasn't that bad. I was able to build and learn some things while I was in there, and music was the one thing I felt that saved me a lot of times. I mean, when I was in the program, it was kind of like it wasn't a juvenile hall. It was kind of like a halfway house thing. It was a facility. I forgot what age range it was, but I think it was up to 19 years old or 20. And I'm just going to focus on the music part of it. When I would lay in my dorm room at night, I would turn on the radio, the dial all the way down to it was a Canadian radio station. I think it was called CBC Radio, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. But there was a program called Brave New Waves, and it came on, I think, around midnight or 11 o'clock at night, Eastern time. And I used to listen to it when I was 12 years old and used to relax me. And it also intrigued me because it was most of the artists that they would show on there were experimental, ambient, deep house, deep techno, more underground stuff that was never on the mainstream. Some bedroom producers, lo-fi producers. And I was just locked in because these were sounds I never heard on the radio. And so I remembered that when I was in that halfway house, we'll call it. And I used to just sit in the bed and just listen to it until it was over and just escape, if you will. And then not too long after me being in there, I think it was a month, I got in another fight. A lot of these fights are from bullying, to be honest. And I was just defending myself, but I always got the short end of the stick, it felt like. And when I finally completed the program, I applied to some colleges, got into a really good one. got in really good art school in Detroit called CCS, and I did fine. I did fine, but it was the summers I would take off that I would just be depressed. I wasn't socializing just because I felt like I was a loser. I didn't think anyone wanted to hang out with me. That chip on my shoulder, or that flaw that I kept referring to, messed me up. It just knocked me off my rocker. It was kind of like, you play a guitar, it's in tune, and someone just turned all the knobs and everything was flat. And I slept for hours. And what I started to do is I bought a synthesizer when I was 19 and some headphones. And I would sit in my room, and a reclined chair would go about 45 degrees. Synthesizer in my pocket, synthesizer in my lap. And I would lay back and close my eyes and put headphones on, listen to a song, and just follow it along. And it was like my escape. For a long time, that's all I did the whole summer. I didn't work for the first summer, I don't believe, and was just disconnected. But the next semester, got a lot better. And so from there on, I got a little more, I got better, more socialized, and I had a girlfriend, and everything was going well. But there still was something missing. I felt like I didn't completely recover from what happened to me when I got incarcerated. And so I started to dabble around in music production, just making sounds and experimenting and seeing what I could do. There wasn't YouTube at the time. Actually, I think Google was out. This is early 2000s. And so I didn't really go online much. I just listened to bands I liked and sort of mimicked them, or create little stories I would write on how I would go about, the music. I planned it out. I used to draw, not notes. I used to I took some ideas from John Cage's book. I think it's called American Composer. And in John Cage's writings, how he wrote music was he put symbols everywhere in almost like a timeline of what comes when, but they weren't notes. They were like spoons, or like someone hits the table. And that really intrigued me because I wasn't trained traditionally through music. I didn't read music very well. I didn't write it very well. I took a few classes in bass and guitar and learned the simple notations. But I found this more intriguing because it was very graphically stimulating. I liked looking at those things, and it just made it easier. And plus the way the interface was I used Ableton, one of the first Abletons. The interface was similar to the sketches. They had bars in them, and then you could paint the bars and create timelines, or create like bars of music through the timeline. And so I would draw that out too, like bass line till bar 8, then bar 9, I'd switch to a guitar sound or whatever. And so that was really intriguing, and it felt the feedback was good. So my confidence started going up the more I made music, and my mood started going up. Just big changes in my life. It's sort of like I just did this on my own. I didn't know that music was actually a healing thing, but it is. And so in college, we had extra credit classes we could take, and I took a sound design class, and from there I was hooked. We got to make our own instruments. We got to build our own compositions in, I think it was Sound Edit. It was very crude, but it was interesting because no one knew how to use the program. No one knew how to write or read music, but we were experimenting. And those seem to be the more fun times in an artist's life, is the beginning process. Because after a while, it gets kind of sterile once you perfect it and you want to do something new. But so that was kind of like my intro to music production, was, that tragedy, if you will, that point in my life where I felt like I was going nowhere. And I was actually going to school for graphic design because I wanted something practical, a daily job where I could just go 9 to 5 and make some funds in order to keep up my hobby at the time. And so I found it very, very enriching. And I think other than your career and your job, you have to have something on the side that you do that enriches your spirit, whether it's drawing, writing, dancing, something creative. I feel like just like food, something that you create helps the diet of your spirit, because a lot of times people just work, come home, they have kids, they have a wife, clean the house, those responsibilities, which are necessary, but a lot of people don't realize how important your soul is, because it's undefinable. It's, you don't see it. But when you feel good, you know there's something going on there. And so that period when I was 18, 19 years old to 20, it felt like my soul was just ripped out of me. Like everything I worked for to that point was taken away when I made bad decisions. So I decided to take music more seriously as a routine. I would come home and learn more and more. And in 2005, I got Ableton 5 and I started making techno and learning how to build on a song. Start off slow and just build, because techno is more about building sounds and the timbre of a sound. It's not like a song where you have a verse, chorus, verse per se. Because you got to think about your audience. You have to engage them. They're dancing, so you have to keep them stimulated, keep them moving. And so that was a good learning experience. But it didn't satisfy me enough. I wanted to get my hands on all different kinds of instruments. So that's what I did. I learned how to sing. I took singing lessons. I got a new bass, started playing bass more, got a synthesizer, a drum machine, DAW, just whatever was available at the time. They weren't expensive. They were just the lowest quality, cheap, just things. So something I could work with and learn how to produce and learn the lingo and the process. And I think it was 2013 when I took it on a really super serious level. And so ever since that, I felt better. And I've had a lot of dips in my life where, breakups or you lost your job or a death in the family, but it always came back to to heal myself. I always came back to music or art, and that helped tremendously. And for this podcast, I also want to talk about how it's practiced today. And I was doing some research on music therapy, because it's now it's a legitimate thing they use in hospitals. They use in trauma centers. They used it in I don't know what the term is, but people who are in hospice, let's just say, people in hospice and are experiencing, grievance because the end of life is coming soon. So there was a TED Talk I actually watched. It's Dr. Fiora Lane, and she's a musical therapist. I forgot where she practices out of, so I apologize for that. But she talks about a story of a gentleman who I think he had a stroke or a brain damage from an accident. I don't recall the details. But he could hardly speak. He would never speak. He would make noises. And they basically were trying to have him do some exercises in order to learn how to speak again or communicate in some way. And they thought music would be a good idea. So what they did is they brought songs into his room when he was in the hospital of songs he was familiar with. I think they were this little, I forgot what kind of song it was. I think it was This Little Lamb of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine. And what she did was she would sing it, and he was kind of following along with his eyes. She would stop singing, and then she would stop singing, because what happened was when she stopped singing, he would fill in the part that was missing. And he would do it slowly, and all of a sudden, you started to see improvement in his speech. because it stimulated the part of the brain that was damaged, and he was able to sing. He was able to communicate. So that's one great example of how music can help heal. And there was another thing. There was this research that Stanford did. They took an fMRI of a brain, and I'm going to show it in a minute. They take an fMRI of a brain, and they did a video of it, and I forgot the composer they used for the music. But when they played it, they showed the brain just starting to light up in all these different parts of the neocortex. And that is an amazing thing. It's your brain likes to follow along with music, and it lights up and stimulates various parts of the brain. And that is very intriguing for me personally, because I think that with psychedelic therapy could be a really good idea for a lot of people who've had trauma, brain injuries, CTE, and football players. I'm not saying it's a solution, but I feel that the research I've done, that there's a lot of potential there to combine it with things in order to create neurogenesis. And so this video, you'll listen and you'll see what happens. And so, I mean, this is, I don't know how deep you can get into this, but if you think back in when all of us were living on the land as tribes and years ago, I'm sure there are tribes today that are untouched that do ceremonies or have some kind of communal music situation going on for various, like I said, ceremonies, weddings, pair bonding, praying to the gods, whatever. But I noticed, like, music is a very social thing. And I think music along with other people is even more beneficial because now you have other chemicals kicking in your brain, like the oxytocin, like touch, the confidence, and it goes up with serotonin, just all these neurochemicals that flood your brain when you have an actual connection with people. And communal music is like the best thing for that. I've been in a few, not bands, but I've jammed with a few people. And it just, when you can connect with someone and it's on the fly, it's like magic. You start to feel really good, feel connected. You feel a part of something. Depression just disappears. And I love it. It's a good thing. I think even if you're a bad musician, I think everyone should try something. And don't judge yourself because you're going to get better. I mean, when you learn something, you're never going to be the best at it. You're going to have to fail. Failure is a good thing. If you don't get those failures out of the way, it's not going to ever get any better. But just let yourself go, And it doesn't have to be music. It can be anything. It can be art, dancing. You do it alone, and then eventually when you get confident enough, do it in a group. Because I think it's important to be in a group situation. It's the best. These bondings that happen between people are very crucial. And through that, I'm going to go back to that TED Talk. What she was saying that music therapy can improve speech and language in some cases, but it also helps physical and motor rehabilitation with people who have had accidents or had some kind of stroke. It also facilitates hope, and which is a really important thing. I think hope, love, and agency are the three things that are really important to a human being in order to have well-being. Some people, I think they have kind of part of their life put together, but then there's things missing. Like, for example, a lot of people are career driven these days, especially females. Females are going to the workforce because they're just as equal as men in the opportunities today to do whatever they want. So they're doing a lot of jobs that are equivalent to men, and men work long hours. That seems to be, the stereotype, if you will. And so everyone's working. And so a lot of people are getting their agency and their confidence up with that, but a lot of that time, a lot of efforts being taken away from working on yourself, working on your soul, being a part of a community. If you can manage that time well, I think you can benefit from that. But some people are just so career driven, they miss that other part, and then they wonder why they're so angry or depressed in parts of their life. So you gotta figure out what the balance is for you, and work hard at it. And it'll be hard at first, but trust me, once you get it going, it feels good. I found it hard to have a career and do music because my social life was definitely suffering, because I would get up, do music, go to work, come home, do music, go work out, come home, maybe do some more music, go to bed. That was my routine, and I had to force myself to go out a lot. And so I'm working on that a lot more now, but during the pandemic, it's quite hard. But what was the other thing? It also increases socialization. Like I said, pardon me, making music with someone, even on Zoom, is a really good thing. Coming up with a plan together and seeing it through till its end is great. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work. I worked with musicians that had an alpha male attitude and just wouldn't give up their ego in order to make something beautiful. And so it was hard at first when I started working with musicians, and I'm very picky with who I work with, but I can tell right away that I can work with someone or not. And it's usually like the kind of music we share together or sort of lifestyle they live. If they're into like taking care of themselves and also, certain other things that relate to well-being, I know that they're good. Especially people who are into self-improvement. That's a good one. That's probably the big ones. If you're into self-improvement and you're a musician, I think we'll get along really well. And you're into experimenting, because some people like a certain kind of music. A lot of people like different kinds of music, and that's where I fall in. Is I like to take different styles of music and put them together to try to create something that you haven't heard before. Because we have rock and roll, we have rap, we have jazz, we have all those, but if you start mixing them together, it's really cool. You get some really good results. And new styles and genres come out of those. Let's see what else. Oh, there was another study they did with babies and music. There was, I think this was Kathleen M. Howland. I believe she's the one who did this study, where they had this baby. Her mother was I think she was in a car accident and she was brain dead, and the baby was a couple months premature. They were going to try to save the baby, so they kept her alive as long as possible. And so she would come in, the lady would come in and put her hand on the stomach of the lady and then just start singing. And then when she started singing, the baby started moving around and kind of going with the rhythm of the song she was singing. And that's amazing that the baby could actually like feel the vibrations of a voice and cooperate. It's so young. So it's in us. It's embedded in us for sure. Actually, I think the study was Dr. DeForia Lane, actually. Kathleen M. Howland she talked about premature babies. What did she talk about? Oh, maybe she was the one. I take it back. It was Kathleen M. Howland. Look her up. She's really amazing. She was doing lullabies, and then she said there was a machine called a Goto box or a Gato box, GATO box. It's a machine they put, I think, on the womb or on the stomach, and it's like a two-tone thing, so it mimics heartbeat. And they found that the babies actually follow along with that. And it's so great. And also when the child is born, the mother's voice, they bond right away, and the child knows exactly whose voice is familiar, and so they feel comfortable like that. And singing to children is probably the best thing you could do for them. It calms them down, because when you're born, there must be a ton of chaos. You're absorbing all these things, and you live in this psychedelic world, and you don't know, you can't make sense of it. And I think something that has a pulse helps them focus on something and veers them away from any kind of pain they may have or suffering. And so, also, another thing is that if you can create an environment like a sound bath, that's another thing that's been kind of becoming more popular as the years go by. There was a place in San Francisco that I went to called Grace Cathedral, and it's on the top of a hill in Nob Hill. And a few years ago, I went to a sound bath. And what it is you get a bunch of people in there, and this is at night usually. You get a bunch of people in there, people sitting on the floor in the pews. It's kind of funny. That's like, I don't know if it's a Catholic church or not, but it's a church, and we're doing this pagan service. I found that kind of intriguing. But everyone comes in, and there are people playing harps and singing bowls and chanting, and it just fills up the room, and the ambiance and the reverb is quite amazing. You can hear the material of the church. You can hear the shape of it in your ears, and that part's very soothing. And also, you're with a bunch of people too that are there for the same reason. So it's definitely a really good communal thing. It's a group meditation. And it's terrible right now that the pandemic's going on, because those are sort of things I really want to do. But if you can do it at home, there's tons of meditation apps. There's tons of YouTube channels that have ambient type music or meditative type music that you can listen to. And I would highly recommend to do that. And if you're into psychedelics, I like to do this. I like to take psychedelic mushrooms, not a hero's dose or anything, just enough to where you can feel it. Put headphones on and just find some ambient music and have it take you. And you'll start seeing geometric shapes, you'll start seeing colors, and you'll start to feel this sense of like infinite being in the universe. Time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist, and it's just pure love. And psilocybin acts as a serotonin, so it sort of replaces it, especially if it's low. It replaces it, so it gives you this sense of joy and purpose. You feel like you belong. It also creates motivation too. The bad thing about depression is it also makes you disinterested in the things you love to do. And I find with psilocybin, I feel more engaged with the things I like to do. And I started to feel like sort of dull with music after a while. I'm like, why? This is the thing I love a lot. So there's definitely was something wrong with me and how I was taking care of my brain. I mean, I was working out, I was doing all those things and dieting, and it just like something was missing. Again, I had a lot of childhood traumas that may have obviously triggered all of this down the line. That's totally true. Because logically, I see myself, I'm like, why am I acting this way? Why am I feeling this way? I know I feel okay on a logical level, but my soul feels so hurt. And so those things I keep working on, telling myself it'll be okay. Keep working at this. Eventually there'll be a point where everything balances out. So I just want to share this personal experience, and also these two ladies that inspired me to keep learning and keep investigating different ways to heal the mind. I I start with the mind first, although the body is also important. But the mind is almost like a way to check yourself. If you're sitting alone and you feel depressed, the last thing you want to do is do something, right? Well, you got to force yourself. Talk to a friend, play an instrument, be silly, take psychedelics. Don't go crazy with them because you can also misuse them. I would highly recommend, if you can, find traditional ceremonies on how ancient civilizations actually performed these mushroom ceremonies or DMT ceremonies. I'm not going to get too far into that because I want to make another podcast based on psychedelics and ceremonial events. So I'll see you next time.